Welcome everyone to another episode of Diary of a Professional. This is Ashley.
D.
Lou, what's up?
Welcome. So let's start in with our gratitudes. Of course, I'll start. So I am grateful for this month. It's gonna be an exciting month. I haven't seen some family. Honestly, I haven't seen some family in like 2 years. So I'm so excited to see them, catch up with them, go to this wedding that all my family will be there for. So I'm just excited to be around fam and catch up. And I have a few more outings too this month. So I'm just excited to do those things.
Okay, want the body roll. Okay.
Yeah, right?
So, yeah. My oh my. That's beautiful. Family time is always so gorgeous. And I've learned to love all of it, even if there's drama. Like I'm like, I'm like, you know what? At least this is like drama I'm used to. I love them. Like
yes.
we'll
be fine.
Grace. I've dropped my expectations for appreciation and just go on that front. Thanks for sharing that, Ash.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was gonna say it's interesting when you said drop your expectations, and I feel like that's what you need to do instead of looking at that person like you're supposed to be my aunt, you're supposed to be my such and such title. They're humans, so just appreciating them,
Yes, like negative feelings have no space in that heart center, and I obviously we all have our moments where we catch ourselves, we're like, damn, I could do better, but always being mindful and trying to be the best version, that's really just the way to go. But let's see, my gratitude. So, I'm really grateful for all the experiences I've had to this date. Like somehow not that it all magically makes sense, but I can see where like little bits and pieces are coming together that I've like collected as like, whether it be in my career or in my personal life. And like all of these tools are like coming together into this new like thing that's trying to manifest in my life. And is that feeling of like certainty in uncertain times, right? And I'm in this new astrology group, and we had our first meeting, and it was like totally amazing. And we were talking about April, and she's like, if you're not good with God in April, you're gonna have a hard time. For those of us that are sitting cool with God, we gonna be all right. But if you're not, it's gonna be a struggle bus. So just sharing that with everybody. Hey, this is a time to get good with God, get with faith, find that grace, trade expectations for appreciation, go with the flow. And not revel in fear, because fear is not going to be our friend. Well, it's never our friend, but it will especially not be our friend in this month. So that's me, y'all.
Can we get an amen?
Amen.
I hear that. I don't know. What am I grateful for this week? I think I am grateful for the ability to, how like when you see something or you experience something, right? And it's kind of like one way. And then when you go back and you can kind of see it with a new, fresh set of eyes or a different perspective, and it just provides so much more clarity and peace and like, oh, this makes sense. I think I've been doing a lot of reflecting, and certain things are just like kind of how you're saying, like certain things just like kind of fall into place, like clarity. I am grateful for clarity because when things kind of make sense, even when you don't realize it or not, things kind of linger in your mind, they take space. they preoccupy you. And then when you can finally like make sense and make peace with something, you can kind of like let it go
Mm-hmm.
and you can make space for new. And I think I've been in that space and it's just like, you just feel lighter, you just feel,
Yeah.
and
It's a
I think,
transmuting of energy,
yeah,
like it just takes on this whole other
yes.
thing.
And it kind of reminds you that even like whether it's like the day to day and this, sometimes the stagnation of things, like you're still a growing thing that's like still choosing to grow, and still evolving. So it's kind of like, it's like beautiful.
If you ain't growing, you dying. And if you're not
Girl.
growing voluntarily, you will grow involuntarily.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, that push be rough,
Woo!
you
Those
know?
pushes be out there. They're just life
Urban.
You
shattering.
know what? Speaking of, which is a nice little segue of
What a
being
little
pushed,
transition.
whether it's voluntary or involuntary. I feel like I have been, how like you might not like in putting things together and putting puzzle pieces together, like you might see something on TV, you might hear something on a radio, you might hear a conversation, you're like, it's almost like parts of the universe are conspiring to like have you focus on something that it makes you go, it gives you cause for pause and sometimes in a good way. I feel like, whether it's the pandemic or this generation and kind of not settling or being, multi hyphenates and just kind of exploring the vast, possibilities of who we are as people. Um, I like to call it the pivot. The ability to just turn and move, whether direction, in how you're moving in life. And um, I'm in the nursing world and I was having a conversation because there's this nurse who I won't even get into the whole thing, but basically she has been found guilty of homicide due to giving the wrong medication. And she's 38. And I think about, you know, whatever happens to her in whatever case, like she no longer has her nursing license. And for people who, when you work for something for so long and then and now she's involuntarily having to make a shift, in how she chooses, how she's going to have to support herself in her life and her career. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. And I think it's especially hard for generations that build such an identity around the work that they do and like the time spent,
Right.
doing something when, in fact, like none of that really matters, right? Like we're on a spiritual journey, not on, our materialistic or earthly, let me call it earthbound plans of like what our jobs are, what we dedicate our time to.
Mhm. I mean, I hear that, but girl, bills
It's
still got to
tough.
get paid.
It's tough. It's tough. But I
It's
think it's a lesson of like not being attached to anything worldly,
mm,
like overly attached because things are going to happen. And
right.
if we trust that things are happening for us and not to us, if we really embody that, then we can't be mad. It's like this is
Mhm.
happening and there's a reason behind it and there's something beautiful on the other side of that. Obviously, not taking away me knowing very full and well how difficult having to transition, like not on your own time
Mm,
is, like on somebody else's timeline. But
right.
hey, sometimes we need that push too.
It's true.
I also just feel that when you go into a profession like that where you feel like it's just stable, I will always find a
Mhm, mhm.
job. You don't really think in that way, like, oh, what if I do not have a job? You just really do not think that way.
No.
And
Mhm.
um, it's interesting because during heavy pandemic times, um, we are the frontline workers, as nurses. But I lost my job. And it was embarrassing for me to be like, I'm a nurse and I don't have a job. I'm supposed to be, you know, a frontline worker. I'm supposed to be there at work every day. And just that pivot and change of like, what am I going to do now? How am I going to eat, pay bills, survive in
Yeah.
that moment in time? So it made me realize like no we need to really look beyond our profession and what we do. Granted, I mean, I was working, I worked elsewhere, it was COVID times, but it made you realize like no, your profession cannot be all, it cannot be your whole identity, and you need a backup to the backup because things can
Right.
change so quickly.
Very quickly.
So
Very
quickly.
quickly. And you
Yeah.
made a good point. Like in some professions, it's, you choose it because you value certainty.
Yeah.
And you realize that even those structures are not always certain.
No.
It's such a wapow moment in your face to show you like it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. Or conducive to, maybe your lifestyle. Like that's not for everybody to, be in those situations and in that space. And like I was watching this show, and this, it was a janitor or whatever, and he was like, I guess he had done so many different things or whatever, and so many different careers, and the person was asking him like, how did you, like, he thought he was a janitor his whole life. He was like, no, he was like, I had dreams, and certain things I chased and certain things I didn't. And he's like, you can kind of almost like, you know be a slave to your dream because you shun everything else and opportunities that could be coming your way in the pursuit of a dream. Like it can be, your purpose, or it could be a distraction. And I think sometimes, especially nowadays, when you can have like a degree that'll cost you $100,000, you it's like you have to do it because you've gone so long doing it. But sometimes, you know, just because you spent a lot of time making a mistake doesn't mean you have to follow through with it. Um, whether it's your own expectations or how you saw your life panning out, or, others' expectations on you. And but I think you have to come to a place where you have to really evaluate your motivations. What is keeping me on this track? Why am I only looking at this as the only avenue? I mean, sometimes we actually look at it for our happiness, which it's a no-no. Um, but you really have to evaluate, like, why am I doing this? And, you know, when's when,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I mean, Jamie Lima, forgot the middle name. But she's the founder of It Cosmetics. I love hearing her speak, and she says, it's as important to follow a dream than when to stop chasing an old dream.
Hmm.
Like both of those discernments are very important.
Yes.
And she did, a whole career shift. She was an anchor at a news station, and that was her dream job. And then, things started happening where it became no longer her dream, and you have to know when to quit while you're ahead, and even if you're
Right.
not ahead, it's like, but don't keep rowing in the wrong direction. Like, even if you just make a 2 millimeter shift, that'll change the course of your entire life. Literally, your destination will be entirely different, even
Right.
with just a 2 millimeter shift.
It's so true. And it's funny because I mentioned this in my Women of Color nursing episode. I'm going to be reevaluating my profession a few years down the line. Do I really want to be here? What else is out here for me? I mean,
Yeah.
at the time, I'll be like, what? By the time I hit 40, like 20 years of nursing easily.
Yeah.
Is this where I'm going to grow? Like, and I like you said, we need to take a step back and reevaluate which direction are we heading into, or is
Yeah.
this going to be for me?
Mm-hmm,
And it's okay.
Yeah, and it's like we get into things because we want to fulfill a certain thing, right? Whether you're
Right.
like somebody who really wants to help others, especially you guys in your field, etc. But there are other ways to fulfill your big why.
Yeah.
Like you have, and we all should have a big why as to why we're doing the things that we do. What really enriches us is that contribution, is that, whatever it is. You can maintain that big why and honestly like find better ways to fulfill your big why, right? Because things get stale. It's the law of familiarity too. It's like we need that advancement so we can continue getting that juice. Like happiness is not going to just fall on us. Like the apple's not just going to fall and hit our head and boom.
Right.
It's like happiness needs to be looked for, nurtured, um, you know, uh, gain that muscle, right? Of having, that happiness over growing and change, etc.
Yeah. And I think it's important to also not wait for things to be like so horrible or so bad, for it to feel like whether you're being pushed out or whatever, like, I think if you keep your ears and, eyes open to things, like things will find you. Like certain things will just, you'll be like, oh, I never knew, or I didn't hear about this. But if you just feel like, nope, I'm good here, this is what's going to be, or suffer through it, complain our parents, there's jobs they've been doing for 30 years plus and they've hated every single day of it.
Every single day.
You know what I mean? And there could have been something out there that could have made them happier, less stress, less work, and paid more. But because
Or
they
the
just held
same.
on to that idea that this is it and this is how fulfilling this has to be achieved, nothing else changed.
But they
Nothing
didn't
else
even have
changed.
a concept of needing to find fulfillment in their work. Like they were
Right.
okey doked into believing that it's normal, natural to hate your job. I mean, when I was in business to business sales, like I had to go. Like I was only able to stay a year. I was like, this is crazy. Like people are like taking the phone wire, they're like wrapping it around their head, and they're like making these jokes. And I'm like, this ain't funny, man. Like I can't be in this environment. Like this is gonna start rubbing on me no matter how amazing I am and how much my energy is like out there, like it's
Yeah.
going to begin to
It's
affect me. And it
contagious.
did. It is. It's contagious.
Yeah.
And you need to stand guard of your mind. Like stand guard at the gate of your mind,
Yes.
period.
Where
Because
everything starts, everything flows.
everything, you gotta protect that bad boy like your little girl's virginity.
Girl, when you put it that way,
I don't know why that was the first thing that came.
I don't know. Maybe it's the way that people be, studying, the females anatomy and uterus. That might be a good reason.
Woo!
Needless to say, it's precious. So,
Precious, important, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But no, really, we have to take accountability too,
Mm,
because, oftentimes we're like, oh, but they're my mom, or, oh, but they're my dad. And it's like, nah, we could still try to build some boundaries. We can
Mm-hmm.
still try to strategize, like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know what? If you know that they love reminiscing, then instead of giving them the opportunity to fill you with fear, then reminisce with them for, like spend all the time reminiscing with them. You know what I mean? Like fill them in something that is not something negative. Fill them with just that. Have that strategy and build those boundaries. But we do have some agency as to, what happens around us.
yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole nother episode, y'all.
A whole nother episode in itself,
Ashley
right
and I
there.
are we know this topic, that topic, like
The
first
parent
on the
boundaries are
subject.
real. You have
Yeah.
to. So,
But it's so interesting. I feel like right now, like all of our energies are shifting, and with all of that,
Mhm.
so is like people, them thinking about what it is that they want to do. I mean, with this whole great resignation, New York City with the vaccine mandate, only for us regular workers, our performers and our rich athletes, they're good. They're good. Their pay is just fine. Just throwing that in there. But with all of these shifts, and they're going to continue to be more. I mean, we're, we're heading, we're in a very interesting time. In our
Yes.
financials, we know it's not going up right now, but when others get fearful, we get graceful and strong. And, when others are selling, you're
Mhm.
buying. I'm just like throwing some tidbits in there because it's not going, our finances, everything is showing that we're not going to be in a great time shortly.
Right.
So
Right.
we got to prepare ourselves to continue to pivot, and not just in our careers. We got to pivot with pivot with our finances. We
yep.
have to pivot with our relationships. We have to pivot, where we find our happiness. Like in times of winter, your game plan looks different than in the summertime.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going into a time of winter when it comes to financial markets and things of that nature. Then we have to find strength somewhere else, y'all. Like, and things
Yeah.
rebound. There's never been a time that it hasn't. So
Right.
after winter, there's always spring and summer. Every
Yes.
single time, it never fails.
Yes. Even after the longest of nights, the sun will still come out. You just have to prepare for the night. You got to have all the things you need that, metaphorically speaking, that extra little warm blanket, lighting candles, whatever it is, so that you can come out unscathed and untraumatized when the sun
Right?
does finally come out, because
Thriving,
it will.
thriving, because you would have learned something throughout that
Right.
experience. And y'all, if you're going through hell, you got to keep on going. Don't just stand there in hell. Like, keep on pushing. You got to just keep going.
Yes.
But
Yes.
that's the thing. People get stuck. Once they realize they're in hell, they just get stuck. They're like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, this is my life. And they
Right.
don't know how to make that pivot,
Right.
you know?
Correct, correct. And
Yeah,
they're
I
not
think,
trusting.
yeah. I mean, obviously we, presented a dilemma, but in trying to provide a solution, I think sometimes you do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. You know what I mean? So even if it's taking a step down, taking a step back, hopefully people have set themselves up in certain situations, let's say financial, like, people don't realize your 401k, you don't have to wait, or, 403b, you don't have to wait till you're 50 something to pull it out. If you needed an emergency, it's your money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Money.
emergency. Yeah, there's emergency day, and even you can take loans against it for business
Right.
purposes if there's a business
Right.
opportunity that you're excited about. Yeah, like we can't just pigeonhole ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, and get information. I think that's, a big piece. Like if you're focused on finding new answers to new quality questions, you will find them in really amazing ways. But if
Yeah.
you're only focused on the things you have no control over, and you're lacking focus and vision on what's at least your intention. Fine, you may not know what it looks like ultimately, like what that final end piece is, but at least have an intention of how you want things to change for you.
Yeah. And I think it all, in part of that, but and in anything in life, it's what and who you surround yourself around. You know what I mean?
Average of
Because
5 people you spend most of
there,
the time with.
there's some people who, and sometimes you just need to vent, which is fine. And there's some people who you just need them to listen. There are some people who will provide real answers, and there's some people who are resources. But these are the times where you have to, even if they're like your bestest of bestest of bestest of friends, if they cannot make the situation better, it's not worth having that conversation, because that energy will only have you feeling worse and stagnant and feeling like ain't shit I can do about it. And there's some people who just live for the drama and not for like, you know.
They don't want solutions. They don't want better. They want to live in that home of drama, just
Yes.
constantly feeding themselves.
Yes.
You know,
And maybe it's because that's all they know and they've never had to, really overcome adversity in a healthy way. So if they don't know how, they can't give you the manual on how.
Listen, the most expensive mistake anyone can ever make is take bad advice. Okay? You can't take money advice from your broke friend. You can't do that. You can't take business advice from somebody who's had their business go bankrupt 10 times. Okay? Like, we need to
They might be able to tell you what not to do.
If that, because clearly they haven't even discerned that, really.
Yeah.
Maybe ask some questions about what they did and then you discern what it is that they did wrong. They're not getting the message.
No.
So yeah, it's also critically important to know where we're getting this this feedback from, for sure. That's a great point to make, Mark.
Especially in this day and age when there's so much out there. Like if you were to look on, and right now I'm on a nice little Instagram fast and I've been loving it. It's been like I'm like literally like I have what's my incentive to go back? I really don't have one. Like I really don't. But I just think about all the little things, like if you look on every little thing, this is a good way to make money. This is a good way to do this. This is the way, and it's just like y'all not really giving the people a real. Y'all not telling what y'all capital is, even for the people who, let's say, make money, right? If you really own a business, what your taxes look like? Do you have employees? How many hours are you putting in your day? Because sometimes, like, I don't mind a 9 to 5. You know what I mean? I don't mind knowing that this is my day ends. I get to rest. I get to be the other part of me when I leave this certain building. I love knowing that if I call out, the whole world doesn't stop and neither does my paycheck. Like, that's what benefits are for. You know what I mean? And I can appreciate those things and I know those things about me. Like, I'm not a morning person. So I couldn't like be like, I'm going to open up a coffee shop. Who's getting up every day at 4 or 5 in the morning to serve your ass a cup of coffee? I don't even like coffee. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to know those certain things about yourself and know that if you're looking at everybody's wins, because really, a lot of the internet is a highlight of everyone's wins, you can't try to do that pivot based on someone else's trajectory. That's where people go wrong too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, we need to mimic people who are living the lives that we want to live. That just is what it is. Obviously, that looks different for everyone. And, one person might follow, Tom Bilio. They love him and how he's doing something. And somebody might follow, Vishen Likyani. They like his stuff. You know what I mean? Like, we all have different things that we like and admire and how we want our lives to look. We just got to choose somebody who's actually living the life that we want to live. And they're out there. There are definitely role models out there that, that are great role models, that are very successful and that do have their own businesses and are working 6 days out of the month. Like, that's crazy. And they're making, $1 million a year. Obviously they work hard that time, but they have strategies that are working. It is out there for us and there are rubrics already made. We just have to go out for, synthesize what we want. Boom.
Yeah, I think it just, obviously everyone has to tailor it to their way and know that it's not something that necessarily happens overnight because, especially in this microwave society, like people will get very frustrated if you're not seeing the same results in a quick amount of time as everyone else. And I think, like you said, even if it's a 2 millimeter shift, it's a shift. And, things you have to cultivate them, you have to work at them, you have to, really, like slow cook it.
Become intimate with it, iterate it.
Everything always boils down to discipline.
Yes.
It just boils down to discipline. If you want it, be disciplined,
Yes.
and you'll
You
see
know,
that progress.
right.
Mm-hmm.
You
And
know,
then
I think
yeah. Mm-hmm.
even when it comes to, like I say, a skincare regimen, sometimes it takes 6 weeks to see a change. And that's like a month and a half. Some people don't have that kind of want to put in that kind of time, or they think, that pimple got to go away yesterday. And that's not how it works. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? You really have to be patient with yourself. Obviously, real time life things happen, but you have to, that's when you set benchmarks, realistic benchmarks, and goals for yourself
Mm-hmm.
that, and then, check them off, even the little ones, because that'll help start to build momentum, in a positive direction. But
Mm-hmm.
listen, I can't say it's easy, because till this day, I think, like, if I weren't doing what I'm doing now, like, what the hell would I be doing? But you also have to figure out, like, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know the things you can outsource, know the things you can build upon, and certain things just ain't for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can probably do most things that we want to, but the things that don't come to us, like, don't
Mm.
force it. Definitely get somebody else to assist. Like, there's no need to get wrapped around in that stuff. At least,
Yeah.
obviously at first that might not be an option. And
Yeah.
like that's okay if you have a strong enough why you're doing this. If your end goal is super clear, and the kind of impact that you want to have on the world, it's so clear, and you have that certainty that this is what needs to happen, then you'll find ways to do even things you dislike doing. At
Yeah.
least, while you get into a space where you can outsource it, or,
Right.
whatever
Right.
whatever the case. And we can get creative with that too. Get a student to help you, get a volunteer, get an intern, it's not about resources. It's about how resourceful you are. Like, there are plenty of people with resources that don't do dick. And then there are people that have nothing and they create empires because they're resourceful.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
So
true. It's very true. And I think some people also have to remember, like, let's say certain roadblocks, or, not a no today.
Setbacks.
Yeah. Or, setbacks or whatever. Like, it just might be a temporary no. You know what I mean? If it's something, there's ways to maneuver, like certain detours, if you will, whatever. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's not the right time. Hard to see it sometimes. It's hard to discern it sometimes, but you know, there are certain people, like, if you watch, like, certain motivational things that, or even like the Kanye doc, things he was like manifesting things from like 20 years earlier.
crazy.
It's crazy.
He
You know
was
what I
like,
mean?
I
call me
haven't watched
Ye.
this.
And look now.
Say that again? Sorry.
In the documentary, he's like, they might as well call me Ye. And now look, years later, he goes
Boom.
by Ye. He
No,
was
that's why.
manifesting everything.
Yes, that's why our words are important, and what we think about is important, and what we're focusing on, because sometimes we forget,
Yeah.
not sometimes, most people forget that they've asked for what they've received.
Yeah. Yes. And though it's like one of those beautiful things where you can literally look back and be like, this is the moment that I planted that seed. And sometimes it can take 2 years or even 20 years to come to fruition. But if you still keep going on that path, it'll come.
Yes.
It'll How
Oh
it comes,
my
I
God.
don't know, but it'll come.
We cannot get off of this episode and not discuss how ridiculous it is that people think that by 30, you're supposed to have kids, be married, perfect mom, perfect family, the house, the dog, the picket fence, the best job, $1 million. No. Can we dismiss this bullshit, please?
And guess what? You'll still be okay.
Like, absolutely fucking not. Like, most like rich, successful people didn't even get there until their 60s. Like, some people didn't even start real career until their 60s. Like, we're not all on the same timeline, y'all. Like,
No.
and it's okay as long as
Yes.
you're pushing and you are clear with what it is that you are looking for, and you're constantly fostering good feelings and being close, with whatever entity you believe in, and staying let me not say motivated, because that word sometimes I struggle with motivated, but staying very clear and in faith that whatever result you want, you can and will get. You just
Yes.
have to believe you can. You can't have conflicting ideas like, oh, but no. You have to be certain that this is something that's going to be accomplished, and sure enough, it will manifest in whatever way the universe feels fit, because it's not going to always show up in the exact way that
No.
your limited mind, and
Yeah.
imagination comes
Be a
up.
little specific with the universe.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
too.
Or being open to how it presents itself. That's part of that pivot,
Time, and say timelines. What's in that
Yeah.
prayer, you let God know, or whatever entity you're talking to, your time, a little bit of a timeline, because that could also mean to it 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It has no sense of real time like we do.
Right.
Right. Right.
Be clear, specific, just like you're creating these business goals and you want to have these SMART goals and all this stuff, and use that same formula for your prayers as well.
Correct.
Specific, measurable, actionable. Anyway, let me
I
stop.
agree.
That's how we pivot, y'all. That's how we deal with pivoting.
That's the pivoting point. And guys, if there is something that if there is a muscle you need to flex and really work out on, is pivoting, because
Mm-hmm.
there will always be something that needs to be pivoted on. That's just
Yeah.
a fact of life.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly. If things stayed the way it was when we were first born, like where, now a phone is a computer. It wasn't like that. You know what I mean? And you can see, like, in certain workspaces when it comes to technology, the older people who are able to pivot and excel, and those who are just stuck and kind of angry and jaded because they're unable to adapt.
Yeah.
Really the pivot is being able to adapt to your surroundings and your environment, and that changes all the time, even when you're in the same place.
And
Um,
they're unwilling, really, because it's really generally not ability, it's unwillingness.
yeah. And you have to just it's about, I feel like, being open. You have to be open. You have to manage your expectations. Yeah.
100.
I don't know.
Whew, y'all.
Yes.
Pivoting. It's
May.
hard, guys, but it's got to get done. And, share with us, where are you pivoting in this time? I feel like the vast majority of us are pivoting in one way or another. It might be manifesting in your life, with your children, or your work life, or your relationships, or whatever it is. Share that with us. What are you going through? And,
Yeah.
we'll share back with some love on, our thoughts and on the subject.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
And with that, I feel
Another
like,
lovely one.
till next time, y'all. The
Yes.
queens and you.
Cheers, guys.